Today we're going to find out if Baldur's Gate 3 can be played by Chat GPT, so I'll be asking it some different questions just to evaluate its knowledge on the gameplay and see if it would be useful for a new time player to check out its advice. Now, I did do a few questions and I don't actually know if Chat GPT has good enough information on this game, and I'll be breaking that all down in this video. So the first question, what is the best party composition in Baldur's Gate 3? I want to see its overall ability to put together a good team. I expected to recommend things like Wizard and probably a Rogue, because Gale and Astarion have such heavyweight pull to them, but are those really the best classes, especially if this is your first time playing? We shall see what it recommends. So in Baldur's Gate 3, the best party composition can vary based on your playstyle, the encounters you're facing, and the weaknesses and strength of the characters. However, a well-rounded party typically includes a mix of roles and different situations effectively. Here's a balanced team composition. So first they got the frontline fighter. So this is the either fighter, paladin, or barbarian. So I actually think those are some pretty good recommendations there. So soaking up damage, controlling the battlefield, and protecting weaker party members. So Lae'zel, a fighter, or custom paladin. That's actually pretty good information. You should have a heavier or more tanky build. I would also like to add in things like the Moon Druid can actually soak up a ton of hits, and it's pretty straightforward in how to play. Just have your summons up and go into wild shape. But fighter is probably the absolute best pick for this role, so that's great. Next, we got a healer or support, and you don't really need a healer because healing potions are so plentiful. You can throw them on the ground and heal everyone. There's a lot of options, but I do like this because cleric and druid are actually incredible classes, but they're better used for damage, I believe. So that is a solid tip, because honestly, going with a cleric or a druid, you're not going to have a bad decision there. Either of them are great because they can heal your team and buff party members, provide utility and support, and deal some damage. You can also have a cleric or a druid at your camp and apply all these to you and then just leave them at the camp. So hirelings can do that role as well. But Shadowheart as a cleric, that just makes sense. I think that's best. Tempest cleric, life cleric, or the war cleric, domain, any of those. Life cleric's good too, but damage dealer, rogue, arcane trickster. That's a red flag right there. They just said that arcane trickster, which is arguably the worst class in the game, is a damage dealer. Rogues don't get extra attack. Rangers do. So Ranger I could see. Like, I don't think the Ranger is really it's an okay class. Like, Rangers are good. Gloomstalker being the best. But if you combine these together, then you have a damage dealer. Like a rogue thief with the Gloomstalker and the fighter, that's a great damage dealer. Or a rogue assassin with the Gloomstalker, that's another great mix. The Gloomstalker Ranger is kind of I would say the best. So yeah, but a sorcerer, big points for that. I just think the arcane trickster is not the best choice there, but a sorcerer is great. I'm surprised they do have spellcaster wizard here next, so that does make sense. I think if you went with a team with a fighter, a druid, a sorcerer, and a wizard, or a warlock, sorcerer, a mix of one of these three spellcasters, I think you'd have a good time. However, I feel like a bard kind of fits in well with this theming, because you can get the extra short rest as well as get a nice addition to the team in terms of crowd control. So if they added bard to here, that'd be great. But again, they did reference Gale and Will. So here's the example party composition. They got Lae'zel is a fighter, Shadowheart is a cleric, Astarion is a rogue, Gale is a wizard. So the most basic, but I guess that makes sense for most people playing. You should just keep them roughly like that, but I think there is some option for moving around that, and especially if you have your own way you want to role play with the characters. I think that's important too. But yeah, that's good. That's some pretty good tips. Let's see what the best 5 classes in Baldur's. We'll go subclasses. We'll get specific. Subclasses in Baldur's Gate 3. So I wonder what it's going to recommend for this. We got Eldritch Knight first. That is an interesting choice, but a good choice. I think the Eldritch Knight is a very good class, especially if you know how to build it out. Tavern Brawler typically being one of the best builds for this. Early on, you get the Lightning Jabber, and that works really well with sorcerers and wizards. So yeah, that's a good choice. I really think that's a great subclass. Can deal significant damage melee while having access to spells for versatility. Frontline fighter with control. It does kind of have control. I mean, you can take hold person. So it does, yeah, and you can give disadvantage to the saves. I would say so. Life Domain Cleric. I don't think that's really the best subclass. I would even argue Tempest Cleric is way better. War Cleric is a good dip. Life Domain is okay. Like, I feel like for a first-time player, Life Cleric's nice for extra healing. But again, you can use health potions, and there's other ways to heal your team, like short rests and things like that. So you should long rest a lot and get your spell slots back. My recommendation. If you're on Tactician, then 80 camp supplies is quite a bit, but on easier difficulties, 40 is pretty decent. You can buy items too to give you, because there's so much gold in Baldur's Gate 3. But primary healer, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say this is the best subclass, but clerics are great, so I can see that. Thief Rogue is an interesting one. I mean, if for a subclass, the Thief Rogue is the best of the rogues because 3 levels for an extra bonus action can go good on like a Barbarian, a whole lot of builds, Gloomstalker Ranger, you name it. So extra bonus action makes it incredibly flexible. I wouldn't recommend, like, the thief kind of falls off after 3 levels, so I mean that's pretty good advice. Evocation Wizard specializes in powerful offensive spells while minimizing collateral damage, great high dealing. I mean, Evocation Wizard is probably not the highest damage. I mean, if you go with a Magic Missile build, that's fun, but that's a bit complex, I feel like, for the first-time player. Sorcerer will be much easier overall. Less spell slots, but you can just pick damage ones and add. If you pick a Draconic Sorcerer, you always have Mage Armor, and you'll always be dealing like a good amount of damage, adding the Charisma modifier. So I don't know how I feel about that choice. Evocation Wizard is a good. I feel like for a Gale works well, but Sorcerers are just better, I would say. Hunter Ranger is pretty solid, but it only comes online at like level 11, I find. So yeah, I don't know. These choices are okay. I like that it started with Eldritch Knight, but all of these like are not the absolute best, I would say, in terms of strength. But we got some honorable mentions with Path of the Berserker Barbarian. That's a new one. Raw melee damage and tanking. College of Lore Bard. We missed out on the Sword Bard. Wow. And we went right to lore. That's interesting. An Oath of Devotion Paladin. That is a very Oath of the Ancients or Oath of Vengeance or Oath of the or Oath Breaker. All 3 of those are better, I would say. Interesting choices. I don't think I agree here. So I guess we'll move on to another question. We'll look at what is the best class for your main character in Baldur's Gate 3. So we're going to see what his choices are to pair with. It might even give us a team composition. Okay, it's given us balanced, versatile option with the Paladin. So Strengths offers a mix of strong melee combat, healing, and support abilities. That's true. Frontline Fighter and support. Oath of Devotion for healing and defensive buffs. I don't know why they love Oath of Devotion so much. Oath of Vengeance for more offensive capabilities. That makes sense because you have Misty Step and Hold Person, which are 2 incredibly great skills or spells. Fighter, I can see that. Fighters are good. Fighters are straight up just a good class. I think everyone that's new to Baldur's Gate 3 should just use a fighter because they are just pure damage. You can go Battle Master, they get a little bit of crowd control. They're great. Straightforward, high durability. Frontline tank and damage dealer. Subclass Eldritch Knight. I like that. Again, Eldritch Knight is good. Champion for increased critical hit chance. That's smart, but they completely ignored Battle Master, which I think is probably the best. So yeah, they're, again, not the best advice. I'm just, honestly, I feel like Chat GPT is pretty good at figuring things out, but for the minute details of Baldur's Gate 3, primary spellcaster Wizard. Again, Sorcerer I feel like is very underrated. I think it's just going with Lae'zel, Gale, Shadowheart. Ranger is often in their list so far too, so I'm curious about that one, but Stealth Utility Rogue. I don't know. The Rogue's great for a 3-level dip, but yeah, I don't think that these are great choices for your main character in Baldur's Gate 3. These are very interesting. For new players, Paladin or Fighter. I agree. Paladin's a great class to start with. If you're playing on an easier difficulty, go with a Paladin with 3 or 5 levels of Paladin, 5 levels of Warlock, and you'll be able to do 3 attacks before a Fighter can. So the Paladin's actually pretty good, especially with Warlock. Even as a Sorcerer, you can attack twice and cast a spell as a bonus action, so that's really great. They're a little bit more complex, but as long as you just know the basics of 3 attacks and taking the Sorcerer in for the bonus action attacks, you'll figure it out. Experienced players, Wizard or Cleric. I feel like even a Cleric for a new player, if you go with a Tempest Cleric, that's pretty solid, honestly. So that is another good option, but Ranger or a Rogue to take advantage of stealth mechanics is an interesting choice too, because I don't think that stealth is really good on your first playthrough because you don't know when combat's coming. On a second playthrough, a rogue is amazing because then you know where the fights are, so you can kind of optimize for that. So I don't know if I agree with this one either, but we'll go with what is the most powerful class in Baldur's Gate 3. It might give us a few options again, but we'll see what it thinks the most powerful. By powerful, if it's not specific enough, I might just copy that and put most offensive class. But they put wizard number 1. See, the sorcerer is more powerful. You can cast 2 spells. Like, yes, a wizard can use evocation to keep your teammates safe, but a sorcerer can do fireball and then quicken fireball. Or haste, and then next turn they can do fireball, quicken fireball. Like 3 fireballs. That's better than a wizard can. And the sorcerer can twin haste, so it can even give your wizard another fireball. So, in terms of offensive power, they did add sorcerer. Okay, I gotta give him some respect. Wizard is more so utility, not just crapping on wizard. The wizard's really great utility, but I feel like for a first-time player, this is a complex class. Gale is a wizard, and it's nice to be able to switch out spells, but you gotta know when is best to use certain spells, and that's kind of better on a second playthrough, where the sorcerer, if you get in a fight, you either use your charisma to talk your way out of it, or you just blast them with endless fireballs, lightning beams, you name it. But I can see that. Cleric is another great spell, so that's a very powerful one. Clerics are powerful. It keeps recommending Life Domain, and I feel like that's what a lot of online guides recommend. But in all honesty, Tempest Cleric's better. So, Life Cleric's better, obviously, for healing. But overall, if you were to pit them against each other, the Tempest Cleric is winning. It's got heavy armor, similar to, I guess, Life Domain, but also gets martial weapons. It gets a reaction with lightning damage. It gets a Channel Divinity, allowing it to trigger maximum damage on targets. So it can have a lightning beam, or it have a call lightning, do 60 damage guaranteed. It's incredible. So Cleric being the most strongest, I don't think so. Paladin keeps making it on the list, and I agree, Paladin's a pretty good class, but it multi-classes so well. 2 levels of Paladin will give you Smite, so you can take 10 levels of Bard and get magical secrets, picks whatever spells you want, get 2 attacks with Flourish, and you can Flourish Smite. So the Paladin itself is great, but it's better as a multi-class, which is kind of complex for a first-time player, whereas Sorcerer, Cleric, those are very straightforward classes. Warlock, it keeps giving us Arcane Trickster, which is honestly such a bad class. And Thief is good at level 3, but past that, it's like not as great. Druid, Circle of the Moon. Okay, I can respect that. I think the Circle of the Moon is a great class, especially just having Halson Circle of the Moon for tanking purposes. That's pretty good. You get a Woodland Being a level 7, so you can then use your Spike Growth from that, and also it has a summon too. But you can use Spike Growth and crowd control really well. So I think the Circle of the Moon is a great class. Conclusion. There we go. That was interesting. I, again, don't know if I agree. It also gave us Warlock, and I think the Warlock's pretty good. Eldritch Blast is hard to go. It's really hard to go wrong with Eldritch Blast because it does scale off level. But it's another one that you can multi-class and get more out of it, I think. Because the Warlock kind of tapers off after like level, I would say 6 or 7. The Fiend being my favorite, so it gave us the Fiend. I can respect that. Draconic Bloodline for a Sorcerer, I respect that. They do have some good choices there, but I guess I will ask one more question and find out what is the best class for honor mode in Baldur's. Actually, that's a team. Gate 3. What is the best team / classes for honor mode? Just want to see if it's going to give us Wizard, Fighter, Cleric, Warlock. Okay, we got Paladin, first off. Makes sense. Oath of Devotion. I don't know why they love Devotion so much, but Vengeance, I agree. Or Ancients is actually really good. It gives... I don't love healing, but it has really good healing benefits. Tank, Damage Dealer, Support. I would agree. Paladins are great. Lay Hands, Divine's notable abilities. Lay Hands. Lay these hands. Divine Smite are a protection. Yeah, I can see that. I don't know why it has Oath of Devotion circled there, but healer support. Okay, it did give us the exact same. Interesting. All right, I think I'm sensing a theme here. So Cleric, Shadowheart, your Tav, Gale, Rogue. Oh my god, I already see Arcane Trickster, but Life or Light Domain. I respect it for putting Light Domain on here. Primary healer and support. exceptional buffs, heals, defensive spells, capable of holding their own in melee. I agree. I think Tempest Cleric needs some love here. They did not mention Tempest Cleric one time. They also did not mention Sword Bard, so I have a bone to pick. Healing Word, Mass Cure Wounds, Spirit Guardians, Warding Flare. Okay, yeah, I guess this is coming from major, like, a lot of people posted these classes are best online, and it is pulling its information from online, so I can totally see why it's drawing these conclusions. I just wanted to critique them and kind of give my thoughts on these. I think it did a great job. Wizard, Evocation, Divination, even going Abjuration, which is very complex for a first-time player. It'd be a little bit much, but I think it's giving good advice there. For a wizard, but I would prefer going sorcerer. I think, honestly, Draconic Sorcerer with built-in armor just makes it so much easier than going with a wizard. So wizard's always going to end up being squishy unless you go Abjuration and go with a crazy build. So damage dealer rogue, I do not agree with that, because I mean, thief is good for 3 levels, but then you could just say barbarian. The barbarian attributes more damage, but you get a bonus action. Arcane trickster being the worst subclass in the game. Womp womp. I don't think that that's great advice. And it gave us that 3 times. So, Arcane Trickster, mamma mia. Why? Why? High single target damage, but they don't get an extra attack. A Sword Bard is going to be a better rogue in all situations. It just does what it does better. So, yeah, I don't think I agree. But honorable mentions, we'll give it this final last hurrah. Hunter Ranger is a good class. It's not a terrible class. The Ranger is just a bit lackluster in terms of its damage output, but you can get heavy armor, you get half spellcaster. It's like Paladin, but a little bit less good. Sorcerer Draconic, that's a great. I don't know why they just didn't put it up there for Wizard and put Wizard as honorable mention. That'd make more sense. And Circle of the Moon, I mean, it is just recommending Halson's class, so I can see that. The wild shape forms add a lot of tankiness, and the lower armor class does draw aggro, so it is a really good tank class. Key considerations: survivability. You pick the wizard, bruh. Crowd control, the wizard, yeah, I guess, but the bard and the sorcerer can also. Damage output, wizard and rogue. Not really. There's so many better classes. Utility, for use rogue for traps and locks. Yeah, rogues are good for that, but the bard can also do that. And you can also use Eldritch Blast, or you could also attack it. Yeah, good options. Clerics for healing and buff, yeah. Or druid, too. Wizard for a range of spells. Yes, that's what the wizard does. And I think that's better on your second playthrough. The wizard's a little bit more complex for new-time players, whereas the sorcerer, high charisma and blasting. That makes for a good first playthrough. Rest in resources. Great tip. Long rest wisely. Long rest more than you think you need to, because you're going to trigger dialogue with your companions, and it's good for the overall story development, especially if you're like a Dark Urge playthrough. Example playthrough: party. Main character Paladin, Oath of Vengeance, Shadowheart Light Domain for healing and support, Gale Evocation, and Astarion Rogue Thief for extra actions, bonus actions. That's some dicey word play there. High single target damage, not really. If you go with a Sword Bard, you can do a ranged flourish and shoot someone 4 times. So that's better. And then you can also use your bonus action to shoot them a 5th time. Very strong in comparison. I think that main character Paladin can work. I would recommend even going Warlock Paladin or Sorcerer Paladin or Bard Paladin to make it even stronger. Cleric, agreed. Life Domain is good for a first time playthrough, but Tempest, Light, War Domain, even Nature are pretty decent. Gale Wizard, Evocation, okay, but I would say Sorcerer probably would be a better choice, and it pairs well with the Cleric because you can do lightning builds. And then Astarion Rogue. I think Bard Astarion kind of works well. Bard Paladin is what I usually go with, so 2 levels of Paladin, 10 levels of Bard. Focus on dexterity, and you get also some nice utility with Conjure Elemental and Cone of Cold. Very powerful. But yeah, that is not bad advice, but I would honestly recommend listening to a YouTuber like myself, I guess, over going to ChatGPT for this advice, because I feel like if this is your first time playing, listening to this advice and sticking to a cookie cutter, this is what you should use meta, when it's not even a good meta. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say this is like 2 to 3 out of 10 advice. I know it is just pulling from a lot of guides out there, but I'll be honest, not a lot of guides have very good, information. I feel like maybe people use AI to make them too, but I think some of the best information is on like things like YouTube. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on all these questions about Baldur's Gate 3 against ChatGPT. If you guys think this video is fun, let me know if you want to see any other types of videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.